All right, welcome to the Exam Room Live, brought to you by the Physicians Committee. Hi, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll, and this is the healthiest half hour anywhere online. Appreciate you joining us right here on Facebook and on YouTube. So let's set the plate for the next 30 minutes. You know, there is a new study showing just how massive of a role obesity can play in the COVID-19 epidemic. So what is it exactly, though, about those extra pounds that make them so deadly? And more importantly, what can be done to fight back and slim down and get healthy? For that, we're going to be turning to Dr. Vanita Rahman on the program today. Dr. Rahman, appreciate you being here to share your wisdom with us.
Happy to do it. Thanks, Chuck.
And we're also going to be doing a double dip when we open up the doctor's mailbag. The Fiber Queen, Lee Crosby, will be joining Dr. Rahman to answer your questions. Lee, welcome back to the show.
Glad to be here, Chuck.
All right, now all things health and nutrition are fair game, so send in your question right now by posting it in the comments section, or you can tweet them to us at Chuck Carroll WLC, at PCRM. Just make sure that when you do that, you use the hashtag ExamRoomLive. But first, let's get caught up with the latest happenings. Here are your health headlines for Tuesday, August 25th. 2020. We begin, as always, with the coronavirus and an update on recent trends. The rate of new infections in the U.S. is continuing to fall, now down 13% over the last week, according to the Washington Post. The number of people dying from the virus also down 7%, while hospitalizations are showing an 11% drop. That is the good news, but despite the improvements, roughly 40,000 new cases were reported on Monday, the second most in the world. In other news, a new study finds dementia may kill 3 times as many people as previously thought. Researchers at the Boston University School of Public Health estimate that as many as 13.5% of all deaths can be attributed to the disease, far more than the current records indicate. Data shows the number of cases involving Black and Hispanic men are the most likely to be underreported. The findings were published in the journal JAMA Neurology. A plant-based diet consisting of foods rich in vitamin E has been shown to protect brain health and reduce the risk of Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia. And finally, a big name plant-based creamery is celebrating a major victory over Big Dairy in court. Miyoko's Creamery has been in a legal showdown with the state of California after the state barred the company from using the terms like butter and lactose-free and even cruelty-free in its marketing. The state claims that can create confusion among consumers, but in response, Miyoko sued the state, and now a judge is granting what is called a preliminary injunction, allowing the company to continue to use the aforementioned phrases. In the ruling, the judge calls the state's evidence of consumer confusion empirically underwhelming. Okay, now we turn back from the courtroom to the exam room. And under the microscope today is the connection between obesity and COVID-19. A recent study concludes, quote, obesity plays a profound role in the risk of death from COVID-19, particularly in male patients and younger populations. It is the latest evidence that obesity and the epidemic with the coronavirus are colliding, creating a true life and death struggle for tens of thousands of Americans and many more worldwide. But what specifically is it about those extra pounds that is packing on the risk for COVID-19? For that, as well as some healthy ways to lose weight and fight back against the coronavirus, we welcome Dr. Vanita Rahman to the program. Dr. Rahman, so glad you're here with us today.
Thanks for having me, Chuck.
Before we get to the tips on the health, let's take a look at the study, which was really fascinating. This was published recently in the Annals of Internal Medicine, and it's more than just you're overweight, you're unhealthy, therefore you're at a higher risk for COVID-19. Researchers really took a pretty deep look at all the stats here. What is it that they found?
Yeah, so really great study here. This study was done in Southern California at Kaiser Permanente. And the reason that's important is that for those of you who are familiar with Kaiser Permanente, they're an integrated healthcare system or a health maintenance organization. And what that means is that everyone who's enrolled in the plan has equal access to healthcare. So we are adjusting for these socioeconomic factors that can play a role in research. So what the research team did was they looked at nearly 7,000 people in the health plan who were diagnosed with COVID-19 in the spring of this year. And then they looked at their mortality rates, and then they adjusted them according to obesity or comorbidities like diabetes or hypertension or race or ethnicity to see what is really driving the rates. And what's fascinating is that they saw a clear trend between the BMI, which is what we use to assess our body composition. Not a perfect test, but it can be quite useful, especially in research. And a BMI under 25 is considered normal. Over 30, it's considered obese. Over 40, it's considered severe obesity. And what the research team found is that at a BMI level greater than 40, the risk of dying from COVID-19 was 2.68 times greater, so nearly 3 times greater. And then for those persons whose BMI was greater than 45, the risk was almost 4.2 times greater. And this was really interesting because it was independent of other comorbidities. We often think it's obesity driving other comorbidities that may be causing the risk, but we're seeing this risk is persisting just for obesity alone.
That is fascinating to me. Now, the one thing that I want to mention, I want to stick primarily with the overweight thing, but I know that the study referenced a J-shaped curve in the risk. And I believe that there have also been other studies that show that it's not just people who are significantly overweight, but people who are also significantly underweight are also at increased risk. Is that what the study found as well?
They did. They saw that, BMI under 18 or low BMI was also associated with higher mortality. And that's always been a bit controversial in most research. We don't know why that is. Is that for people who are otherwise healthy but are just lean? Or are those people who maybe have other comorbidities and have what we call unwanted weight loss? Or weight loss due to chronic comorbidities, where we can see why the risk would increase. So it's hard to tease that out from this so much.
The study did, though, tease out some of those comorbidities that you were referencing. And virtually since the beginning of this pandemic, we've been hearing about comorbidities like high blood pressure and heart disease and high cholesterol. The findings here, are they pretty much in line with the other studies that we've seen?
They are, so these comorbidities like diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, immunocompromise, organ transplant, these are now well-established risk factors, and they are seeing that. But what was fascinating here is even after the team adjusted, so the question always was with obesity, is it the weight that increases the risk, or is it the weight-related comorbidities that increase the risk? And what they found was even after we adjust for those weight-related comorbidities, such as diabetes or hypertension, we're seeing this independent risk just related to obesity. And that's really important. So someone could be overweight or obese and may not have diabetes, may not have heart disease, may not have high blood pressure, but their risk is still high.
So why is that? That's very interesting to me, because there are people, as you said, who are significantly overweight, but somehow don't have any of those comorbidities. And yet the study is saying that they're still at significantly higher risk for COVID-19. What are researchers thinking is the connection there? Why is that if they're otherwise, I'm going to put this in quotes, healthy?
Yeah, so it's really fascinating, Chuck. Everyone developed these comorbidities at different levels of BMI. It's sort of what we call the two-hit hypothesis in medicine, that we have a genetic predisposition, but then we also have an environmental trigger, and everything sort of comes together to create the perfect storm. So for some of those people who may be overweight, who don't develop the comorbidities, maybe their genetic predisposition is lower. But as we're seeing in this study, their risk of COVID-related death is still higher. And we don't know exactly why that is, but there are many theories that excess body weight, especially visceral fat or abdominal fat, increases inflammation in the body. It sets up what we call a prothrombotic environment, meaning we're more prone to forming blood clots, and vascular complications, which we know plays a key role in COVID-19. So again, theories, we don't know yet why that is exactly.
And do we know whether men or women are at higher risk? We heard early on that it seems to be this really hits men a little bit harder than it does women, and then it seemed to be pretty much neck and neck. What did this study show?
The study shows the risk, especially with obesity, is definitely higher for men, and interestingly, for men under the age of 60. So we know there's an increased risk with age overall, but when it comes to weight-related risk, we're seeing the risk is greatest for men under the age of 60. And what's also very interesting, I think a key takeaway from the studies, we've been hearing a lot about race and ethnicity, how certain races or ethnicities are disproportionately affected. And what this study is showing that wasn't the case in their analysis. It wasn't race or ethnicity. And the thought, again, this is an integrated healthcare system. It's a capitated system where everyone has equal access to healthcare. So that, level the playing field for everybody. So race and ethnicity itself doesn't increase our risk for COVID-19. It's more everything else that may come along with it that increases the risk.
And that's right in line with something that Dr. Kim Williams mentioned on this show. I believe it was a few weeks ago. He said, look, it's not race, it's risk. And that goes into the systemic racism conversations that have been happening so frequently now throughout the country. And he said, really, if anything, the evidence that there is out there shows that African Americans are, if everything is adjusted, they're at a slightly reduced risk for having COVID-19. So if there weren't those other factors at play, they may actually be faring better than other races, which to me, I find is absolutely fascinating. So we know that now to be the case. Let's talk about ways then that we can improve our health, reduce our waistlines, get healthy, slim down. Talk to us about some of the best ways that we can go about doing this right now during the pandemic.
Yeah, so, this is something that we have plenty of research about, whether we're looking at Dr. Dean Ornish's data or the broad study from New Zealand, is that following a low-fat plant-based diet can help us lose the extra weight and also keep it off. And in the broad study, people lost an average of about 24 pounds at 1 year. And this is really significant. This can lower the BMI from 45 to under 40, to under 30, so forth. So it's key here. But again, it's important to not only eat a plant-based diet, but to eat a healthy plant-based diet that's low in fat, rich in nutrients, low in caloric density, the things that we usually talk about, because not only will that help us lower our weight, it also reduces the risk for these comorbidities. So it targets all aspects of our health, and it's never been more important.
Let me ask you this. I think that especially right now, somebody's hearing this, they're like, oh my goodness gracious, I got to lose weight. I got to lose it in a hurry. But then we've also heard that it's best to lose, especially in large chunks of weight, lose it slowly over a period of time. If somebody really does, they want to lose those 5 pounds a week or something like that, what do studies show as far as long-term success on rapid weight loss versus the more gradual approach over time? Which of the two people will be more successful in your opinion?
Well, I always worry a little bit when someone experiences a rapid weight loss, because the question there is, how did they lose it? Are they starving themselves? Are they doing some kind of fad diet, like a very prolonged period of fasting? Or are they using some kind of liquid diet? While these things can lead to immediate weight loss and it can be profound, it's usually not sustainable, because none of us want to be in a state of starvation. So what I find is generally a gradual weight loss is much more sustainable, because we are slowly reversing the underlying cause of the weight gain. We're slowly changing our diet, our lifestyle, our relationship with food, and then that's much more sustainable in the long term.
All right. Well, let's talk about other ways that people can improve their health and to lose weight. I know coming up next month, I believe September 26th, you're starting up another round of your plant-based weight loss program. What can people expect here? I believe this is a 12-week course again?
Yeah, it's a 12-week course, and it's really meant to help people reach their weight loss goals. So we do a combination of, we educate people. We also give them practical tips that they can implement in real life and benefit from them. And then very importantly, we're doing it in a group format so people learn from each other, and that peer-to-peer support and mentoring is so crucial, and learning how to navigate tricky situations from one another is key. So just bringing that all together to help people eat better, get where they need to be, because I find most people accept that maybe plant-based is healthier. They also accept maybe low-fat is the way to go. But then it's putting it into action that's the hard part. I believe you. No, how do I make this happen? What do I feed my family? What do I feed myself? And that's really where we focus on practical tips and applications of this.
And how has it been for the first group? I know that there's probably 1 or 2 classes left, but they're more than 2 months in at this point. A lot of people starting to see some success.
Yeah, so it's really wonderful. People are reporting great success every week. They check in with us. They tell us what kind of weight loss they've experienced. And, so many people are writing in saying they're so grateful for the weekly support and the weekly education and the tips. It's really been wonderful. And also, people have really opened up about their struggles and what they're working on, which is wonderful. And then sharing that with each other. That's all part of the program.
And how important is that group component here, having that, I guess, camaraderie and accountability? How important is that in terms of helping people succeed, not just as they're getting going, but also in the long run?
I think it's crucial, Chuck. We as human beings, we're social creatures, and you and I have struggled with weight loss, and we know it's tough being on that island by yourself. And then when you're surrounded by this group of people who are facing the same thing you are, it's so empowering that it's not just me, it's all of us. We're in this together. And, hey, I had a hard time with breakfast yesterday. Tell me what worked for you. Maybe I can try it. And that kind of group support is crucial, especially if people aren't getting it from their family and friends, which often they're not, then they need this support group around them.
Absolutely. And that for me was key as I was beginning my weight loss journey as well. I cannot stress that enough, that accountability. And it almost became kind of a competition, who could come to the plate and have the best, the healthiest week, so we would all come in there just revved up, ready to go. And then, of course, as you were just talking about, the hits and the misses of the week, what worked, what didn't work, and who's got some ideas on how to do things a little bit better. It was really great, formed a lot of great friendships there. So this next one begins at the end of September. I believe September 26th, and people can register right now by going to pcrm.org and looking for the weight loss program there. Go ahead and sign up. It's every Saturday, 1 hour commitment once a week. Is that what it is?
It's actually 90 minutes. So we make it that way. So it's 45 minutes of education and presentation, and then 45 minutes of Q&A, because we really want to get to everyone's questions and make sure we tackle them all.
All right, pcrm.org to register. And speaking of Q&A, that is the perfect segue here for us, because it is time now to open up the doctor's mailbag. So if you have a question for Dr. Rahman, go ahead and post that in the comments section now. And as a bonus today, we are welcoming the Fiber Queen, dietitian Lee Crosby from the Barnard Medical Center. She is also here to field some questions here as we open up the doctor's mailbag. It has been entirely too long since you have been on the program, Lee. I am so glad that you are here.
Yeah, I'm delighted to be back. It has been a while, hasn't it?
Way too long. And
time flies when you're sitting in your house.
All right. So the first question is yours, because you have been waiting so long for this. Gut bacteria is always a popular question. And so this one comes to us from Facebook. This person wants to know, what is the total weight of the gut bacteria in a healthy body? And is it possible to have too much good gut bacteria if you're taking probiotics?
Okay, I actually was really excited. This came in before the show, and I asked for this question because I love gut bacteria in general. Also, in part, because gut bacteria love fiber, and that is my jam. So I had to jump into this. Okay, so weight of bacteria in a human body, on average, I had to go to PubMed and pull a study because I don't want to give you guys bad intel. So 200 grams, which is about 7 ounces, or to put it in practical terms, the weight of a large apple. If I had one, that would be great. So the vast majority of those are in the intestines. Now, if you're taking probiotics, I don't know of any specific upper limit that would do that, because what I have heard it referenced is that taking probiotics is a little bit like putting a dropper into an Olympic swimming pool. I don't know if it's quite that dramatic, but it's not likely to have a huge effect. And I do want to mention that this is fairly hot off the presses still. So in June of this year, the American Gastroenterological Society actually put out new guidelines basically saying that there's just not sufficient evidence right now for using probiotics to treat some of the conditions that they're often used for, things like inflammatory bowel disease or irritable bowel syndrome, or even for treating a Clostridium difficile infection. Although they did find some data for preventing a C. diff infection or Clostridium difficile, and then also some less common conditions, things like ileal pouchitis, which can sometimes happen after medical intervention for inflammatory bowel disease, or also for low birth weight infants. That's not why most people are taking probiotics. So the nice thing to do here instead is actually to not worry about taking probiotics from a supplement, but is to save your money and grow your own probiotics right in your gut by feeding them these high fiber foods. And that supports the good bacteria that you want and helps edge out the bad bacteria that you don't want. So DIY it on the probiotics with these prebiotic high fiber foods.
And just to recap, did you say that there's as much bacteria there as about the weight of an apple?
Yeah, 7 ounces.
Wow.
So a little shy of half a pound. And again,
Wow.
most of that is in the gut because that's where there's food for those to eat. Although you do have some on your skin and such as well too.
That is a lot of bacteria.
It's a lot of bugs.
A lot of bacteria, and that is a lot to wrap your head around too. Okay, next question, Lee, sticking with you. This one comes to us from Lisa on Facebook, a question about glutathione. Is there any truth to a deficiency of glutathione leading to more severe COVID symptoms? What do we know about that?
You know, that was a great question. When I saw it come in, I was like, oh, I'm remembering glutathione from my nutritional biochemistry courses, but I've confessed I had to go do a little review on glutathione. I did know this much. It is a potent antioxidant in the body. It helps your body detoxify some dangerous substances. But regarding COVID, there is at least one paper that was published in the American Chemical Society Infectious Diseases Journal that actually does make the case that a glutathione deficiency could lead to more severe COVID-19 disease and poorer outcomes in patients. But note that I'm saying hypothesis here. So this would need to be confirmed in larger studies, and they make that point. We don't have good clinical data or anything for using glutathione to treat. But the fun part here is that there are things you can do to kind of boost up glutathione levels in your own body the more natural way, which one of those is eating broccoli and broccoli sprouts. Now, what's going on with that? They actually contain a compound called sulforaphane, which also helps fight breast cancer. So this is win-win. But that particular compound can boost up your own body's glutathione production. So, and then in general, because glutathione has antioxidant properties, like why use it all up when you could be eating other antioxidant-rich foods and giving it some support? And then also the last piece to know is that drinking alcohol of any kind depletes glutathione. So I know it's fun, but best to sort of minimize that if you can.
All right, Dr. Rahman, this one is coming to you. A weight loss follow-up question. This is from Andrea at 1208. She said, oh my gosh, my heart goes out to her. My weight loss has plateaued. Who has not been there? So frustrating. She says, I'm 138 pounds at 5 feet 1 inches tall, and I have a BMI of a little over 25. What can I do to get to a normal weight on a whole food plant-based diet?
Yeah, Andrea, I can relate. I've been there too. You're going along your weight loss journey and you're having success, and then you just plateau. It can be very frustrating and very disheartening. And some of the things to think about is, first of all, great that you're following a whole food plant-based diet. It's so important to do that. The other thing to look at is, are you keeping it low fat? And, really watching those high fat foods like avocados and nuts and seeds and olives, really minimizing those. And then avoiding any kind of processed vegan food, which you probably aren't consuming if you're eating whole food plant-based, like the vegan meats or cheeses. Those are also calorically dense. And lastly, if you're watching the fat content and you're still struggling, it's also important to look at our portion sizes. One thing we know that has happened in the US is that our portion sizes have increased steadily. And while I'm not talking about counting calories, I don't think any of us should do that, or about starving ourselves. We do need to eat what our body needs. So if we eat more than that, we will gain weight. So just being cognizant of that is also important. So I think that may be something worth visiting also, the fat content and then the portion sizes.
All right, so you hit that plateau. That's frustrating. And then Dawn is looking toward just before the finish line here. Dr. Rahman, sticking with you. This question is from Dawn at 12:21. How do you lose those last 5 pounds? Do the same kind of principles apply here?
Absolutely. I know for me, and I think this is true for most people, when we initially start losing weight, the more we have, the faster we lose it. But then as we get closer to our ideal body weight, it can slow down. It's like the body really fights to get to that ideal equilibrium. And at that point, it's so important to just really focus in on the foods, making sure they are plant-based, making sure they are low fat, and really watching those high fat foods, those nuts and seeds, avocados. They really sneak in and they add a lot of calories. They have a very high caloric density. So cutting back on those, and then really being mindful of our portion sizes. Again, I think the same principles apply. And again, not counting calories, not starving, but really just getting to where we need to be.
All right, Fiber Queen, coming to you. This is a great question here from Vegan Grandma on YouTube, 1223. She wrote this one in. Lee, she wants to know, how can I increase my vitamin E if I'm allergic to nuts and seeds? So what other foods are rich in vitamin E?
I mean, that's a tricky question because most, like, those are the main plant-based sources. So wait, she's allergic to nuts and seeds?
That's what she says. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, Vegan Grandma, I am sorry. That's a pain because normally I would say, okay, well, let's switch over to some of the seeds, right? So flax seeds or chia seeds, because typically nut allergies don't always translate. So vitamin E, the other places you're going to get it are when you're going to include small amounts of those higher fat foods, right? So again, small amounts. We're not looking for much here, but something like a little bit of avocado. There's also some vitamin E in leafy greens, those kinds of things. So you can get it other places, but it's not very much. But again, if you're eating that sort of whole food, plant-based diet, you're likely going to be getting a good amount. The other piece is it tends to be something that it comes with concentrated fats. So there's some question of, exactly how much we're going to need if we're not eating loads of high fat foods. But again, a little bit of something like an avocado would be a place to go. And again, raw leafy greens is going to give you the best in terms of delivering the nutrients that they do have. I think vitamin E is not as heat stable as, say, like a vitamin A would be. So that's probably your best bet. But great question. Again, if you're sticking to whole, healthy plant foods, you're likely to be in a pretty good place.
All right, Lee, stick with me. Let's get super nerdy here with this next question. This is like master's level nutrition education that's about to happen. This one comes to us from Sheila on Twitter. She'd like to ask if pumpkin or squash has a high level of uric acid, or does it somehow cause uric acid in the body to rise?
Okay. No, not that I have seen anywhere. So why are we talking about uric acid? Because typically, now there can be other reasons for it, but typically it causes gout. Is anyone's heard of that? It's causes some excruciating joint pain, particularly in the big toe for most people when they have an attack. The foods that are high in a substance called purines actually trigger the body to take those purines and make uric acid, and the reason it causes pain is it builds up in little crystals that get in the joint, and it's very stabby, for lack of a better word. So the foods that contribute to that are particularly seafood and meats. Those are big culprits. Also, consuming alcohol, particularly beer, can increase people's uric acid levels. But the fruits and vegetables, for the most part, actually almost across the board, are very low in purines, unlikely to lead to any kind of significant increase in uric acid. Pumpkin and squash also in that category, very low in purines, unlikely to cause problems. Beans are a little higher in the purines, but there are data that suggest that eating beans and soy is actually linked to a lower risk of getting gout. So yeah, again, it just seems to come back. And this is why I love plant-based nutrition, because if you're sticking to whole plant foods, you're usually in a very good place.
Dr. Rahman, coming back to you for this next question. And I will say, we were just talking about the importance of a group setting when it comes to our health, and the chat box. I just love the fact that everyone in the chat box now is kind of building friendships and they're talking to each other. It's really great to see. This next question comes to us from Raven on YouTube. This one from 1222. She writes, my fiance and I are going to start trying to have a baby. Should I be taking prenatal vitamins?
Yes, you should. The reason for that is it's important to get a folic acid supplement. And folic acid deficiency is common among women of childbearing age. And we know that insufficient levels of folic acid intake can lead to something called neural tube defects, which is a serious type of birth defect. So really important to start taking a prenatal vitamin. Some people recommend that all women of childbearing age, even if they're not trying to conceive, take it because most pregnancies are unplanned and the levels of folic acid are most important in the first trimester when women may not even realize they're pregnant. So I would recommend doing that.
Okay, time for just one more here. This one comes to us from Dawn on Facebook at 1227. I'm going to ask actually for both of you to kind of team up here. Goes hand in hand. Dawn writes, I've been on 3 rounds of antibiotics. What can I do to restore my microbiome? I recently lost 80 pounds and I don't want to go backwards. So Lee, let's start with you and getting the good gut bacteria back in check. Where should Dawn start with that?
Okay, so given those American Gastroenterological Society guidelines, if you were still on the antibiotics, it might make sense to take probiotics. Now that you're off them, there's just not a lot of data on that. So what you're going to want to do, again, is stick to a nice broad variety of whole plant foods. And why that matters is because you're getting different kinds of fibers and different breakdowns of phytonutrients that are going to feed and nourish those really good bacteria. You're going to stay away from alcohol. It's napalm for your gut bacteria. You're going to also try and stay away from excess salt and processed foods. And again, wide variety. So a lot different kinds of beans and lentils, apples, oats, whole grains, anything you can think of, all the fresh fruits and veggies and cooked that you can bring in there. So to stick to as healthy of a diet as you can, with a caveat that if you are not used to eating this way, that you ease into it, because as you and probably some other people have experienced, if you try and go just full fury and bringing on all the fiber at once, those bacteria are going to have a field day, and you're not, because that's going to end up with some gas that they're going to make. So again, keeping your diet as whole food plant-based as you can is really going to help to breed the best possible bugs you can get.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. Those first 2 weeks going on a plant-based diet were interesting for sure. Dr. Rahman, let's do the follow-up here. Somebody doesn't want to put that weight back on. That's such a big thing with yo-yo dieting, and now you throw the antibiotics on top of this and trying to get the microbiome back in check. Specific to weight loss, how does somebody keep this off and keep it off for good when they're in this kind of predicament?
Yeah, it's a tough position to be in. I think one of the first things with antibiotics is making sure they're absolutely necessary. They can be life-saving and we should use them, but really talk to your healthcare provider about how important it is that you take them. Is it clearly indicated? Having that conversation is important. And then doing all the things that Lee just talked about to repopulate your gut bacteria with a healthy flora is going to be key.
All right. Thank you guys very much. If we did not get to your questions today, have no fear. We will save them and we will do our best to get you an answer on an upcoming episode. So keep on posting them in the comments section, or you can always tweet them to us at Chuck Carroll WLC or at PCRM. Just make sure that you use that hashtag #ExamRoomLive. Now, both Lee and Dr. Rahman, they are available for telemedicine appointments at the Barnard Medical Center. And Lee, before I let you go, I would love to ask you about the process when you're meeting with a new patient. Say someone is coming to you and they have high cholesterol or they have high blood pressure, some of those conditions that we were speaking about on the show today. What is that process like for them to get them going with a healthier diet?
Yeah. So of course the basics, call the front desk and they'll make it all happen. The very first thing I'm going to ask when someone meets with me by video at this point is what they're hoping to get out of the session. Because sometimes they'll have the referral, oh, their doctor wants them to lower cholesterol, but actually they want to get something else out of it. So to do that, then what we'll do is go through and do just sort of a basic medical assessment to make sure I've looked at your labs and that I know all the different health conditions you're dealing with and medications. We're going to talk about your supplements and vitamins, whatever you're taking. And then we're going to talk about what you're eating, not the sanitized version that people think a dietitian wants to hear, but just the warts and all. Again, we're all human beings. So we'll talk about what the standard sort of your meals are looking like now. And then we're going to talk about how we can make changes to that to get you where you want to go when it comes to your health, whether that's lowering cholesterol or losing weight or you name it. There are as many different conditions that nutrition can help as there are conditions. So it's actually a really exciting and rewarding process. So I very much encourage anyone to go ahead and make an appointment and we'll get started and tackle what's what's giving you trouble.
And Dr. Rahman Lee there talking about working with people, preventing it from hitting the fan. But let's talk about somebody who's already been through it, and they've had a heart attack or they've been diagnosed with cancer. How then are you able to work with them to get them on a healthier path?
Yeah, so important. And we see a lot of patients in that situation, Chuck. So first thing I do is quite similar to what Lee just said. I ask them what their goals are for the visit. Sometimes we as healthcare providers assume certain goals, but it's really important to know what the patient is looking for. And then we make sure we tackle those. And then getting a complete health history from them, their medications, what kind of health issues they're facing with now, what have they faced before, what they've tried so far, and then really talking about their diet, where they are now, where they would like to go, how I can help them, and how changing their diet could help their chronic conditions, whatever they are. And then just working with them, having regular follow-up, giving them tips and suggestions that would be useful to them, and ordering any lab work or imaging studies that would be helpful in their health, such as cholesterol levels or blood sugar levels or markers of inflammation, whatever that is that makes sense medically, we can do that. And then we just partner with them and work alongside them. And sometimes we'll have them meet with someone like Lee because she's full of valuable information and she can really help them with their diet. And it's a team approach to helping people.
All right. Telemedicine appointments are available in more than a quarter of a country now. So if you are interested and want to make an appointment, you can see a full list of states where telemedicine is available by visiting barnardmedical.org, or you can make an appointment there, or you can pick up the phone and call 202-527-7500 to schedule your appointment with Dr. Rahman or Lee or any one of the plant-based doctors and dietitians at the Barnard Medical Center. Again, barnardmedical.org or 202-527-7500. Screenshot this right now because there's the web address and phone number right there on the screen. Dr. Rahman, Lee Crosby, thank you guys both very much for your time today. Look forward to speaking with you again in the near future on the program. And if you who is watching this right now are ever curious about something and want us to really cover a topic in depth, don't forget, you can always let us know. Post that in the comment section or just send us a tweet using the hashtag ExamRoomLive. Now, coming up on tomorrow's program, Dr. Neil Barnard will be back. That is right back here on Facebook and on YouTube at noon Eastern. So make sure that you like the Physicians Committee on Facebook and you subscribe to their channel on YouTube so you never, ever, ever miss a new episode. And for today, that's going to do it for us. My thanks again to Dr. Rahman and Lee Crosby for their time, and to the crew behind the scenes that makes this plant-based magic happen. You guys are the absolute best. And to you in the chat room right now, the exam roomies, my thanks as always to you for watching. On behalf of everyone here at the Physicians Committee, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. And until then, stay safe, take a stand, and keep it plant-based.